Okay, here we go with track number 2. We're going to use some of the same techniques, but we're going to learn to move them around in a slightly freer fashion. Before we worked with a specific set of arpeggios, and this time we're just going to kind of do more whittling, and we're going to move the patterns around and use a lot more freedom. Okay, we're going to be in the key of A here. It's like a sort of an A minor rock groove that we're going to be playing over, and we're going to use notes solely from the A minor pentatonic in the left hand, and then we're going to use almost all notes from the A minor pentatonic in the right. So let's look at the left hand notes first. We're going to be using predominantly these notes, which is going to be 3 to 5 on the low E, then 3 to 5 on the A. Okay, then we're going to move up and play 5 to 7 on the A, 5 to 7 on the D, 5 to 7 on the G, move up, play 7 to 9 on the G. Okay, then we're going to play 8 to 10 on the B, 8 to 10 on the high E. And I'm sure you'll all recognise that those notes are from the A minor pentatonic scale. Obviously these are as well, and there's no reason that you can't use those, but just for the purpose of demonstrating how to move this around, we're going to use these notes. Now, the tapping finger is going to play all the notes on the 12th fret, all these. Okay, now you'll notice that the B is not in the A minor pentatonic scale, it's the C, but it still sounds good when you play these things. It doesn't really make any difference, especially at the speed we're going, so there's no point in just kind of moving up for the sake of one thing. So strictly pentatonic with the left hand, and then we're going to add that B with the right. So remember the first arpeggio we played, the E minor. Technique's going to be exactly the same, except we're going to just rip through all these positions of the notes that I just showed you. So here we go. Now, you can make up specific exercises for these type of things if you want. You can do 2 on each. Or 1 on each. But the idea, or what I want you to get into, is just being really free with it. So mixing it up all the time. Just mixing it up, doing as many as you want. Maybe you can go like, I went up 3, then back 1, then up another 3. So, back 1, up another 3, back 1, up 3. Okay, maybe you can stay on 1 and then move a little bit. But basically, just, you know, practice the technique and then try and learn to move around and be free with it, so that when you're playing solos and you just want to kind of rip out a bit of tapping, you're not restricted to playing the same thing all the time. And it'll also help you that when you start jamming, the problem is if you practice everything set all the time, if you go up and jam with a band in a pub or whatever, if they're not playing a tune that's the tempo or the feel that you're used to, it might be hard for you to instantly adapt. I like techniques that can adapt to situations that I don't know what's coming up. Suddenly it's a different tempo, but I can kind of get in there and make it work somehow. Anyway, let's do this along with the backing track and see if we can make it sound sensible in some way. Okay, so you saw me playing for all those positions there and being fairly random. If you just want to go across the basic pentatonic, no problem. The only reason I favour that one a little bit is because there's less kind of shifting around of the fingers. You kind of keep the same shape as you go. Okay, so the second one we're going to do, just a quick demonstration, is the second technique that we learned, where we were going basically... If you remember that one, exactly the same thing. The only thing is the technique is different. Instead of going up, we go down. And you'll notice that as we get to this type of speed and this type of lick, this one starts to come into its own a little bit more, I think. So here we go with the demonstration. Okay, so you saw that was the second variation we did. Now what we're going to do, in order to use more notes now, we're going to start to get super widdly. Okay, we're going to have to change our scale. The right hand's going to sound exactly the same, and we're still going to be using all the notes from the pentatonic, but we're going to add 2 notes to make what's called a Dorian scale. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a B note and an F sharp note. Okay. And the scale is basically going to look and sound like this. Okay, now that's probably sounded like a G major scale to you, and in fact it was, because I ended on G. But it's a mode. What we're using is a mode, and it's called A Dorian. And if I made the emphasis A, okay, but it doesn't really matter when you're playing over an A backing track, even if you land on G. Okay, it still sounds like A Dorian, because modes are not really about the scales, it's about the music that's derived from them. That's another subject. But anyway, so they're the positions we're going to use. I'll just tell you what the notes are. We're going to be going 8-7-5 on the high E, 8-7-5 on the B, 7-5-4 on the G, 7-5-4 on the D. We're going to be going 7-5-3 on the A, and 7-5-3 on the low E. And we're going to be using the sort of, I think it was the third technique that we used, which is similar to the first one, but with the added note. So anyway, it doesn't really matter. Basically, the technique is this. Okay, so just pulling off like before. And then we're just going to use this tapping finger all along the 12th fret. Now, when I do this, I'm going to move it around a little bit more, because there's a few other places that you can play this. But if you know your Dorian scale, all you've got to remember is that anything that's got a group of 3 notes, as long as it fits in with what you're doing, as long as it's got 3 notes in it and it uses that exercise, it's going to fit over this. And you can experiment with some unusual notes, but we'll stick with the Dorian scale for now. And let's have a little demonstration and see what it sounds like. So you notice that the tempo of that track was 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're actually doing demi-semiquavers there. So it's 8 notes per beat. Okay. Okay, so we're going to have the same timing on the next one. Dorian scale again, right hand exactly the same as before, but as you remember the technique is going to be like this now. This is starting to get interesting, so let's have a little demo of this one. Okay, and finally for this section we're going to combine the two like we did before, and it's going to sound like this. Okay, so it's going to hammer up, hammer down, hammer, here we go. Okay, here we go with another variation. Kind regards to Eddie Van Halen for lending us this one. And it sounds like this. Again, we're going to be using the pentatonic positions that we used at the start of this section. And this one sounds like this. Okay, so what we're doing is we're tapping this case, and you know it's a formula we're using here, so don't worry about the specific notes because we're going to be moving it around in just a mo. So we tap down with the tapping finger, pull off, pull off, pull off, hammer, hammer, and again. And just in case you want to know the notes for this particular one, it's 12 on the G string, pulling off to 7 on the G, pulling off to 5 on the G, pulling off to open, and then hammer to 5 to 7. It's a triplet lick. Now when I move strings with this lick, what I do is I go 2, 3, 4, and then the two notes where you would come back up, that's when I move to the next string. So what I'll do is I'll just do it here and then move up slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You notice I move down there, and then to damp, it's very difficult when you play at this speed, but to damp, I just, when I slam, the underside of this finger will damp the note I've just come from. 2, hopefully. And then when I move up, the pointy side of this finger will damp the string I've just come from. See that? Okay, so let's have a little demo of this one. Okay, so you notice I did the semi-quaver triplets there, 2, 3, 4, it was 6 notes per beat. If you find that technique difficult and you want to play along with the backing track, okay, don't be worried about going back to the slow tempos like we did right at the start of the DVD. So when it's going down, 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 you just go. Okay, and just play the slow one just to get the technique under your fingers. And if you're still having problems, just go back to your metronome and practice for a bit. Okay, we're looking at another variation now, and this is going to be sort of using a technique which I think some people call hammer-ons from nowhere. And what basically happens is that you start with the left hand, so you're not triggering off with the right hand tap that you normally do. And what happens is you just go. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. I'm using exactly the same pentatonic stuff as I've been using so far, but I just go. So it's this first finger of the left hand that fires it off. Okay, so let's have a little demo with the backing track and see what that sounds like. Okay, so hopefully you agree that's a different sound, a little bit more kind of keyboard-esque, a little bit more legato sounding possibly. And I've just got one more variation on this track to show you, and tipping our hat to sort of Paul Gilbert here. And what happens here, we're going to use a Dorian scale going up one string. Now you can do this on any string that you want or do a combination, but I'm going to show you it on the B string. And let me show you the notes that you need. It's going to be 5B, 7B, 8B, 10B, 12B, 13B, 15B, 17B, 19B and 20B. Now the technique here is quite an unusual one, and it's a very, very close grouping working on one string. And what basically happens is you hammer, or you do your tap with your tapping finger, and then you hammer with your left hand to the same place that you tap from. Okay? And then what you do is you go to the relative scale tone above that. In this case, it's going to be this G, 8 fret B string, and then you tap that, and then you pull off. So it's basically like doing a combination of the two that we discussed earlier, but just the only difference is you're kind of using that same note. Then what happens is when you've completed that triplet lick as many times as you wish, say for example it's 4 times, then what you do is you slide this finger up to the next position, and then you do it a position up. Slide again. And you just keep going up like that. Now when you play this at speed, it really does sound good. And you can be very random with the amount of times you want to play each position. Okay, so I'll just show you what it sounds like a little bit speeded up. Okay, and now I'll do a little demo with the backing track. And that concludes some ideas for tapping along with track number 2.